Um, Good afternoon, everyone. I'll turn that over to Steve, and he'll do the introduction, and then we'll get started on the webinar.
Well, thank you. As Melissa said, this is Steve Marzoff, the Integrated Services Program Director for VITA, and this is the next in our series of Webinar Wednesdays. Some of you may have been on the call it was last week when Kenny Brevard went through the MSAG Alley GIS analysis and actually walked us through the actual results from a locality, that being Roanoke, and showed and thank you to them for allowing us to share that, and then and talked about how to look at the MSAG Alley results. Today we have April Branton, one of our other GIS data analysts for VGen, that is going to talk about some of the common inconsistencies that we found and things that you might find in your data, and really how to go about getting them fixed. So, if you have any questions as April goes through it, please ask. These sessions are really designed to help you. So if you end up leaving with a question, we want to make sure we get those questions answered. We want to make sure that you get the maximum value out of these sessions. So one housekeeping thing, please mute your phones. Almost every time we'll get some background noise of shuffling papers or things like that, or people talking to other people. You can hit #6 to mute through the conference bridge. I have yet to see a phone that doesn't have a mute button on it somewhere, whether it be a cell phone or a desk phone. So they all have some sort of capability to mute. Please mute your phone, because we do want to keep the line open so that if you do have any questions that you can ask them. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And April, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And you can hear me okay. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you can see my screen as well.
We can.
Okay. Just want to make sure before I start. As Steve's saying, my name is April Branton, and I'm so pleased to be able to present on the Webinar Wednesday. And reiterate, we're just going to go through some RCL a little bit and also some common inconsistencies. Real quick, some of the talking points or agenda that I'm going to go through today is obviously what's the importance of GIS. Then I'm going to jump right into RCL, and then we're going to go through a demo and look at some of the inconsistencies that we find actually on a regular basis. Obviously, all my GIS folks out there know how important GIS is and how to utilize GIS, but for a handful of people that really, don't work in this field very often, don't, have to have kind of a little bit of a background. So GIS integrates spatial, which is where, and attributes, which is your details about your information. The GIS contains information about where and what something is. Usually it's referred to as geographic or geospatial information. Working in a GIS, you have to integrate 5 key components. Those components are, obviously you have to have hardware, you have to have the right software, data, obviously, and then people, and then your workflow is extremely important. For most important, the jurisdictions and the PSAPs have an investment in this GIS data. They want to see a return from, whatever GIS data they need to use. One of the GIS benefits all sorts of departments, whether it's public works, whether it's law enforcement, local government, communities, anybody that basically has a smartphone is used in GIS. GIS consistently will deliver a return on investment, including cost. I know cost is a big issue for a lot of local governments. Time savings. I know a lot of people wear many different hats. You want to increase your accuracy and productivity and revenue and better decision making. Actually, I have gotten someone to raise their hand. So if that person wants to speak, go right ahead. Okay, I'll just move forward then. All right. Also, when you're creating data for GIS, creating it is one thing, maintaining it is another. We're always out there trying to find easy ways to maintain our data and be able to do it on a regular basis. Obviously, all of us know it's a lot of work that's involved. You have to have a routine workflow for effectiveness. You want to complete this information and you want it accurate as possible. It requires a lot of commitment and communication. One of my biggest things is communicate. If you have issues or if you have questions, just let me know. So I'm going to jump right into RCL so we can get moving. Hopefully everyone on the line is familiar with the Road Centerline data set. This has been going on probably since, I think, 2001, that this provides a consistent and seamless statewide digital data set of all roads in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The purpose of this was to continue development of this data set to support our base mapping needs for state, local government, and regional. We also want to provide most accurate representation of the Centerlines within the Commonwealth for public use as well as commercial entities. The purpose for the RCL was basically to maintain the base map data set for all these localities. A high quality of this product is available for use within the GIS or computer-aided dispatch. Real quick, our update process is a lot of you local governments will, obviously send us our data. We will, in turn, run the data detection on that and then push it back out to you guys, and then the statewide RCL is published to the GIS clearinghouse. I hope everybody is pretty much familiar with the clearinghouse that we have that is a portal that you can access all kinds of base mapping and other geospatial data that is out there for you to download, which actually makes it pretty simple for you guys to find any type of data layers that are needed. Now I'm going to jump right into our data management. This is pertaining to the RCL. We use Data Reviewer. It is a detection performed by Data Reviewer. It's one of the Esri's extensions. This functionality will allow us to do data detection between two feature classes, and the two feature classes will be compared between one another. So for an example, for the localities and for our use, we do a feature check. This compares the T1 and the T0 for geometry deltas. The T0 meaning that this is the data set that is an older data set, like maybe, back in January that was submitted. The T1 would be their data set that was submitted just this July. So we'll compare those two together to see if there's any change or inconsistencies between those. We also do attribute deltas, which are a table-on-table check, which compares the T1 to the T0 as well. And then also within Data Reviewer, we also do a QC that locates other inconsistencies like segments that don't touch, topology errors, gaps greater than 30 feet. But before we even do that, we have to run a pre-processing on the data. And when we do that, we have to take the older layer that was submitted by the locality against the new layer and run a tool that will put it in a Geodatabase, because Data Reviewer will run that's our workspace that we have to use, that we run all of our batches on. So, and each locality is done individually. So each locality will have its own set of geodatabases with the T1 and the T0 within it. After that is completed, then you have to create your patches that will run. Your geometry patch, which you can look at the window that is on your left, that is your add and your delete. Whether or not anything was added, anything was deleted. On the right is your attributes. Has there been any address range changes? Has there been any street name changes? Has there been any transposes? Once, and then within that, it'll be much easier when we look through the demo, and then you'll be able to see. But I wanted to give you at least a little bit of information before we got to that. Now, for comparing the attributes, since we're doing it against the locality's data, you want to look at their T1 versus their T0, and we will just pull down and figure out which attribute shows the name of the road, which attribute shows the suffix, which is street, road, or name, and then whether or not they have a prefix or pre-directional, and sometimes they have a post-directional in some localities. On the other window here on the right side, that is your address ranges. So you'll just need to we compare the address ranges from left to right, to and from. Once you get your batches all set up within each individual locality, you do that in MXD. You don't have to repeat it every time, which is nice because once you get it set up, you can just pull in the new data and you can run this every time you get, new set of data from locality. Now, when we're doing the geometry checks, geometry checks are on feature. So we're wanting to figure out for the add, which is on the left, you want to compare the T0 with the T1, and anything that contains within the data set. Now with delete, you run the exact same, but you flip them. You put the T0 and then the T1 on the bottom, and then anything that's within, and it will pick up any delete within the data. Now, once you get all your batches created, I normally, on my personal opinion, is that I usually just run one at a time, and I will always do the attribute checks first, because you will run into some duplication. Because if there's been a new address range and they have split the road, then it will automatically be kicked into the add because they've added 2 segments. So I'll usually run my attribute checks first before I will do my geometry check. And then once you do that, obviously you need to validate it, and it will run, depending on how many you have, this can run up to 10 minutes. I've had one that will take an hour to run. That's some of the larger localities. And then once that, you get a little, your data reviewer table will pop up, and it will tell you how many adds, how many address ranges, how many deletes, how many street names, or if you have any transposes. And this is a good example here that this is going to be an add, and it will also show up in an address range change because the address ranges for the segment will have changed as well. And then another nice feature as well within Data Reviewer is also there is an out-of-the-box Esri solution that will allow you to transfer attributes from one layer to another. This really cuts down on, obviously, human error. So, for example, I can go through here on the locality side, whichever name their road name is, and then I can push it over to the RCL master. That way, all of my attributes are pushed over at once, and I'm not typing everything in individually. And another nice feature is, since you've got that MXD created, you don't have to do this every time. It will automatically save in your MXD, so I'm not having to create this stuff every time I do a locality. And it makes it, you know, the workflow goes faster as well. You can also, even if it's something that's not I was trying to, speed limits. You know, sometimes the speed limits have changed, which is a nice feature. If the locality has that information, you can push whatever attribute information over you would like to fill those, to fill any, you know, nulls or any blanks. So now I'm going to switch and run through a demo real quick. And I'm going to log in. Okay, and I am going to just bring up one locality as an example and just run through what we just spoke about. Now, when you get the, when we get the information in, right here is the Data Reviewer extension, which makes it really nice. And then here is the Attribute Transfer extension. I don't know if anybody is familiar with these, which this attribute transfer mapping is, this is a lifesaver, because if you have so many changes, I've had thousands on thousands of street name changes or address range changes, and this makes it so quick to run through all of these to try to get them finished. So this is Caroline County. They obviously submitted data. Over here you can see that they have their T1 and their T0. I have created an art catalog. We had a create. That's when I was telling you how to do the pre-processing. We have to run a pre-process that will model, that will put extra fields in there so that Data Reviewer will be able to run the delta detection. So we were nice enough to have Kenny Brevard, who wrote all of these models, and each of us have our own model so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. So all of us have our own individual model to run, so we can do it whenever we want, day, night, in the afternoon, so we don't have to worry about somebody else using it. So what we have to do is all of our data is housed in one location, all of the localities data, and we just have to run this pre-processing. Everything is dated, so we need to find the T1, which they submitted it, and then we have to go and find the T0, which was their last submittal. runs, it will dump it over here. I'll cancel this out. And then this is where it will be located. It will automatically create a geodatabase for me to dump into my MXD. So I will always copy and paste this into my workstation or my work area where I work with Centerline County. I have dumped it right there. So when I open up my MXD, it will automatically fix that because I have this always named the same. Once that happens, we set to go into our data reviewer. And with data review, you also have to have your own separate geodatabase. So all of those have been individually created as well. And we house all of those. Locality has their own separate workspace for data reviewer, because that's what data reviewer feeds off of. So once we have located the Caroline County, then this is where I can start my new session. I've actually already have a session open for Caroline, which is not, I have not completed it yet, so we just will, and then that way we will see what I need to finish or what needs to be done. They've got address ranges, they've got road name changes, and I will show you real quick. You have to be in an edit session when you do the transfer, the attribute transfers. So here, this is this window, which makes it really nice. The only thing that you have to be aware of is with the locality data, you just need to know what fields they are using so that you can transfer it over to, and you just add, and it will add it for you, and it will just automatically transfer the data over, which makes it super nice. So anytime you have a change, you can do that. I'm sorry? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought someone had a question.
Hey, April, it's Steve Marzoff. I think somebody doesn't have their phone muted. If you can mute your phone, we'd appreciate it. And since it's not doing it right now, whoever put us on hold before, you have hold music. So please don't put us on hold, the webinar on hold again, because it makes it difficult for everybody else to hear. So no hold, and please mute. Thank you. Go ahead, April.
All right. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. I have actually picked out a couple spots that we can go and look at where the data review has picked up. This was an ad. So if you want to see, remember T0 is the older data versus T1 is the newest. So since, I guess, they submitted data back in the first of the year, which it looks like it's the same, but they made a little bit of more of a change in 6 months. So we need to go in there and add that, which makes it nice is and I'll show you real quick how the attribute transfer works, which makes it super nice. You can just have this highlighted, and then you can just transfer the data, and it will populate all the fields that need to be populated. The only thing that isn't populated is the FIPS code, and usually I will put that in manually. And usually that only happens if you're adding a new road. And also we have domains set up to where we just can click and say that was a road addition. Also, it will tell us the date that this was edited. It will also, I'll show you that real quick. You always have to save your edits before it will pop up. If you look here, it has address range date edit, and it will put today's date. It will also tell you that it was me, the one that edited the, or I can go in here and just put in my initials, and it will say whoever made that change will pop up and let you know who did that, which makes it a nice feature too. But also, you have to be careful too. They've also extended this line as well. So you have to be very careful when you, they also could have changed the address ranges. So you also need to be cautious too, because I always try to, anytime I feel like I need to transfer attributes, I will do it, just to be on the safe side. Well, good. They did not change any of the address ranges for that, which makes it nice. And then it looks like they did make a geometry change back in 2014. You know, so that, you know, you just little things like that you just have to try to be aware of when you're adding a new segment. Another thing is dangles, you know, where they don't meet. You can obviously see this was interesting because if I take off the layer that was just submitted, they made a major change. They actually have made, they realized that this needed to be a dual road. So they did add the double line in, but also neglected to snap it to the road. So that is another inconsistency, or I wouldn't call it error. You know, it's just an inconsistency that you see normally. But I think they have not. They have put Jefferson Davis Highway on there, but there is no address ranges attached. All their address ranges are on this side. Another example of is something is moved, which you know, which is actually possible. But then if I look at this, I'm like, so, you know, just to make sure exactly what happened, I'll bring in the aerial, but it has not moved. The interesting thing is their older data, which is the black, was more accurate than the data that they just sent. So I would not make that adjustment. I would leave the RCL where it is. I will check the attributes to make sure, you know, the attributes are correct, you know, but I'm not going to I'm not going to move the RCL since it matches with the aerial photography, and they have not changed the attributes. So that's something else, you know. Sometimes things get shifted, you know, and you're not sure why, you know, that gets shifted. So I found, you know, it's just interesting. And then another is, you know, another geometry change. You know, this was kind of interesting too. A lot of these roundabouts are going in now. And, you know, they actually haven't gotten a chance to incorporate the roundabout into their data. So the question is, you can clearly see it on the aerial photography, but it's it's pretty fairly new, you know, so we were able to pick that up on the RCL. So now it's just a matter of time waiting, you know, for the locality to pick up on that. They have already obviously given this a road name and also have ranged it, which is great. It's just, are they going to do that? Or should we adopt what they have done? That's a question. I'm just going to keep it as is. I'm not going to change, the RCL. Another one is segment. They have, they made some adjustments to the different roads. They had it, and it's also been moved. They've moved it over. Again, you want to take a look at the aerials, and see, so that clearly looks like a legit move. So that needs to be adjusted within the RCL, and also to make sure that the address range doesn't change. You want to, I'll be curious. Okay, they've kept the range the same, So, I was just trying to, give out some same changes, which I've run into a lot where they want to, they fix the spelling, or something was spelled incorrectly. You can go in here and it will just, say the K was left off, but then you have to take a look at the whole entire road to make sure, that you're going to put that K back on there, or that K needs to go on the end there. Address range and segments. This is a good example. I don't know if, let me see. They have a new segment here. The RCL is not split, but clearly they have split it. So that's another, on our part, that we need to fix the RCL since they have adjusted that. And we'll just go in there and split it. And that's another, I can't say enough nice things about the attribute transfer, where we can just go in there and use and split. And then that way we can see what we've done. Yep, and they have. Another thing that I've run across is that a locality will split it, but they will not adjust the ranges. That's another inconsistency that I have noticed. But the nice thing is I've noticed it one time when I get a new set of data in and I run the batches for address range changes, it will pick it up. So it's not like they've forgotten or, didn't do it. It's just, you get it on the next flow, which is nice. So I can go ahead and make those adjustments. Another geometry change is, this is really, they've just decided to change the intersection. Instead of it curving in, they just wanted to go straight. So that would be another, on our part to fix, the RCL to match the locality data. But that's basically the biggest inconsistencies, is the dangle, where the lines are not snapped together. Address ranges haven't been adjusted. Ads are a give-in. Chesterfield County, I think I did probably close to 100 new, they must have a lot of subdivisions going in, so they had a bunch of new ads, and new road names and new address ranges, and the new segment splits, so it's just, I guess it's just depending, on the locality how much changes happen. Some of my rural communities don't have as many changes, and they just are cleaning up a lot of things, which is nice, and that gives me a chance to clean up. some areas. Is there any questions, or is there anything anyone would like to see or okay. I'm going to switch off of the demo, and then not sure if any of you are I know that the past, I guess, year, 2 years, we have started to collect more data besides the RCL. We started to collect address points, building footprints, parcels, basics, and we collected admin boundaries. We collected the hydro, so that we could dump all that information into the clearinghouse. Well, for the past, couple data acquisitions, we have also done address points. We actually do these wholesale. I mean, we bring in the whole locality at once, and we'll run a process independently. We have a tool that we use that we import local data. We have to process the coordinates. We have to calculate the fields. We have to parse out the fields. We have to clean up the attributes. We have to remove any inconsistencies and then replace with the process locality. I'll go back to the demo. I was going to show you how we do that. Because it's actually pretty interesting. Actually, it's all done, basically all done in our catalog. We have all, Penny Brevard created all of these tools that we can use to incorporate the address point. So one of the big issues that I have run into is when someone submits their address point, we have to look at the attributes. So, let's see here, address point. And then we have to prepare the locality. So what that is we import the data. We're still doing the same, we take out the old and replace with the new. So what we do is we import this, I'll just, for an example, I can use, I was trying to remember which one I haven't done, because I'm working on my list of localities to do. Actually, I can do Matthews. Okay, Matthews has submitted data. So if we bring in Matthews points layer, they submitted it first of July. Okay. Now with this, I have to usually I have written down all of my zip codes, and then I have to we do it by zip codes, which is nice. Then I just have to remember which one it is. But once we run that, then it pre-processes it 1:15. So it will run its process, and then it will, which makes it nice. But I've noticed when we have to calculate the attributes, that a lot of localities have everything in one field, like 123 Main Street, apartment 2 is all in one field. So we have to break that up because it has to be in separate fields in order for us to get it within the statewide data set. So once this calculates, we have to run through these processes, and then we can open up. I was seeing if Matthews would be one of the quicker ones. Yes, it is. and then we have to run a coordinates, which is just parameters that were set, I think, to get it in the right state plane so that we can put it into the statewide address point layer. And then I will open up that is yep, it all gets it will all get pushed into this, which will make it nice, and then I can go straight to Matthews and do what I need to do with Matthews. There we go, and there's Matthews County, and the yellow dots or orange dots, however you want to say it, is data that already exists. It's already in the Virginia address point. That red dot is a new house. So that's what we need to get into. So what we have to do is we'll open up their table, and when we did the pre-processing, it created all of these new fields. Address number, unit ID, which is apartment. We have street type, street name. We have to get their data into those fields. So I have to go and see, do they have this as a full address? So we have to look and see if any of these are broken up. If they're not broken up, I have to run a process on splitting them. So it looks like they only have street name, which is Buckley Hall Road, as one. So I have to go in there and split these and put street name in here. And that's all done in I can't do it with Art Catalog open. So what happens is we can go here and we can do field calculator. I'll show you real quick because I know we're getting close. And it will calculate and it will put all the street names in there. But it's not just the street names, it's the street names plus the street type. So I have to take off that street type. So I have the field calculator. We have actually created once again, Kenny has created I guess it's a Python script that will take all of that off, which makes it nice. And then I can do the same sort of thing for the street type. Now, you also will have to do the same thing for the apartment type. See, they've got them together as well, and we want those separated out as well. So that is a quick thing of how we get new locality data within the, now we do the same thing for building footprints. But building footprints, we don't have to do all of the other, we don't have to worry about the fields. All we need to worry about is it needs to be a polygon. So if it's not in a polygon, we can try to get that into a polygon if, because a lot of localities will submit line layers, and some of them will actually give us point layers that are the building or structures. So we have to convert that into a polygon and then we import it the exact same way. With this, all we have to do is remove the old features and then we'll update it with the new features. So I wasn't for sure if anybody was familiar with how we did those. I just wanted to touch base on that, to give you to let you know why we want the building footprint, since we have a statewide building footprint layer. Well, Steve, that was my last slide. I mean, if anybody has any questions, here is a snapshot of who your RCL analyst is within the state, if depending on what area you're in, who you need to contact. And if you have any questions, I mean, you're more than happy to ask me or email me or call me, and if I don't know the answer, I will definitely find the answer out for you.
Thanks, April. Steve Marzoff. Are there any more questions for April before we wrap up for today? These are a lot of the common errors that April and Kenny and Michael see on a regular basis, or the inconsistencies when they're processing the RCL and address point data. It is interesting how varied data is maintained across the Commonwealth. We see all different ways of handling the different unique attributes and sometimes not so unique attributes out there, whether it's a divided highway or a carriageway or whatever. There are, or the circles that April showed, and how localities choose to depict them is often driven by other applications, whether it's computer-aided dispatch or CityWorks or whatever that the application might be. Sometimes drives the way that things are maintained and depicted. So they are definitely the experts in the data statewide, and if you have any questions, you're absolutely welcome to give them a call. You can also call your regional coordinator. There is one regional coordinator for each of the 7 regions which align with the state police regions across the Commonwealth. We're here to help you get your data in the best condition possible, because next generation 911 is coming around the corner, and we want to make sure we've committed to the use of Centerline and address points. Even though the National Emergency Number Association is focusing more on just Centerlines, we feel the address point location is better in actually knowing exactly where the house is or the business is, rather than where it's supposed to be based on the Centerline. And that's why we've committed a lot of resources so far, and will through the PSAP grant program as well, to improving the quality of this data. And that's why we want to do presentations like this or webinars like this, to do the proverbial teach a person to fish rather than to just give you a fish. We want to make sure that you understand those processes to fix your data and be able to maintain it going forward. So, are there any last questions for April, or for general questions that you have at this point?
Hi, this is Erwin Erneston Tazewell. I had one for April right quick.
Go ahead.
And it may sound silly, but I hadn't been able to find anything. Take, for instance, a road that loops back on itself, joins back in. Am I correct that road shouldn't actually snap to it for as far as ranging?
Well, that is a good. I've seen it both ways. Are you talking about like a lollipop? I think some people refer it to like a lollipop where it swings around like a cul-de-sac.
Well, not quite a cul-de-sac, but it just, you might say, a little larger, and it just loops back up. A road comes in, circles through, and then connects back with itself. And a ranging tool, I've had a little problem with that.
Right. Yeah, I have noticed a lot of localities have decided to, not snap it to the, loop it back and snap it to leave a gap, so that when you do range it, depending on where the houses lay, you can't, like for my street, for an example, I'm at 15, and my neighbor that lives in front of me is 22, which to me that, but it's just the way they have, digitized the road and just where the address range links. But I've noticed a lot of localities have stopped or have changed that to where it will not snap.
Okay. Will that cause another inconsistency, as saying a dangle or
It will.
the
When
others?
you run a topology on it, it will probably pick it up. Or
Okay.
it will pick it up. Sometimes they'll pick it up as, I don't know if that would be considered, that wouldn't be considered an orphan. You know, they have orphans, you know, that are just out there in the middle of nowhere, you know, but they're still part of the locality, but you can't get to those guys unless you move into another locality. You know, but that, you're right. That probably would consider as a dangle, and then you would have to make that an exemption. That would be considered an exemption in your, you know, if you're going to do a delta detection.
Okay.
But unfortunately, in Data Reviewer, if it picks up a inconsistency or it picks up something that is not quite right, say I run it 3 months from now, it will pick up that same issue unless, you know, the locality has, you know, changed something. Even though it's not an error, it's not an inconsistency, it just happens to be that way.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'd reviewed your, I guess, guidelines for RCLs and everything, and didn't run across anything in reference to, like I said, you know, a road looping back on itself and joining.
Right.
Anyway, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to see you. Nice to talk to you, Ernest.
It's good to talk to you. Thank you.
And this is Steve Marzoff. I think that you know, gives another example of where there are things that, and that's why we call them inconsistencies rather than errors, because they may be inconsistent with the way the rules are. You know, we want to look for dangles, we want to look for these things, but what may be flagged may in fact not be an error. It may in fact be absolutely correct, and that's the process of going through and weeding those out and making sure, because at the end of the day, the goal that we all need to have is that what the data reflects reality. So, you know, as an example, in the analysis that Kenny's run, it shows parity issues where odds on the even side of the street or vice versa. Well, there are sometimes odds on the even side of the street or vice versa. So that's not an error. It's an inconsistency with the rules, but it is a reflection of reality, and that's ultimately what we want to depict here. It's all about getting emergency responders to the right place at the fastest possible time to have a positive impact on whatever's going on. So any other questions before we close for the day? Again, if you have any other questions that come up, please feel free to contact your regional coordinator, your GIS data analyst, and you know, contact information for all of them is on our website. And if nothing else, thank you all for participating, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.